In 2019, the World Health Organization estimated that there are about 1 billion migrants in the world, nearly 1 in 8 people. This means that more than ever before, we live in societies made out of many cultures, and this diversity can be a beautiful thing. In Australia, Harmony Day is celebrated on the 21st of March each year and aims to grow inclusiveness, respect, and a sense of belonging for everyone. But the very fact that this cause needs to be fought for implies that it's not something everyone naturally does. Cultures can have very fundamental differences, and this can lead to stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. I spoke in a previous video lesson about how stereotypes can be understood using the tri-component model of attitudes. You can probably see how it can be applied to the way cultural groups perceive each other. It's not difficult for prejudice to occur in how individuals might think or feel about people in another group, and this can lead to discrimination in their behavior. However, some factors make prejudice more likely to happen. For example, a cultural insensitivity or lack of awareness. There are often cultural reasons why a person may choose not to eat a certain food or work on a certain day. But if someone else didn't know that, they might assume that the person was being unnecessarily fussy or lazy. Different cultures may also have different approaches to completing tasks or making decisions. For example, in Indigenous Australian culture, big decisions are only made after a majority has been reached in the clan. This can be frustrating for someone who doesn't understand this cultural norm and perhaps comes from a more individualistic culture where everyone makes their own decisions. And finally, differences in verbal and non-verbal communication styles can also result in potential conflict. All this conflict and frustration that can arise due to these factors may result in the formation of stereotypes, which in turn may develop into prejudice. When it comes to issues of cultural diversity, this prejudice may be expressed as xenophobia, ethnocentrism, and racism. Let's look at each of those. Xenophobia can be described as the fear of or strong animosity towards people of different races or cultural backgrounds. For some people, this is a default position. They're often really just afraid of the impact that the foreign cultural ideals might have on the status quo in the majority culture. However, this ends up leading to an immediate distrust of any culture apart from their own. Ethnocentrism is another expression of this, the belief that your own ethnicity or culture is superior to all the others. This can be used to justify excluding other cultures into society or wanting to stop immigrants altogether. And finally, racism, which are negative emotions or actions towards someone simply based on their race. It's similar to ethnocentrism in that there's the belief that one's own race is the most superior. In 2018, a manager at Starbucks in the United States called the police on 2 African American men in her store who were waiting for their friend to arrive for a meeting. She will later argue that they hadn't bought anything and were just sitting in the store, but the 2 men ended up getting arrested by the police and removed, although they ended up not being charged with anything. There were other customers who filmed the event and told the media that they had not bought anything either, but had not been asked to leave. Even if there were various factors at play, one of them was almost definitely the race of the 2 men. The woman might argue that she wasn't trying to be a racist, but racism can be expressed in different ways. Again, from a previous lesson, we saw that the attitudes that people hold can be explicit or implicit, visible or unseen. Explicit racism is easy to spot, and unfortunately still very present in our world today. It's blatant discrimination against a group of people based solely on their race. Examples of explicit racism include the actions of hate groups, such as neo-Nazis and white nationalists, racial slurs or derogatory terms, or when people openly talk negatively about particular cultural groups. Political parties can also express racist policies and openly attack certain cultures. But implicit racism is harder to detect because it's often unconscious or concealed. However, it still ends up impacting the judgments and decisions that people make towards people from different cultures or ethnic groups. The Starbucks manager may have acted the way she did out of implicit racism. Other examples include police pulling drivers over due to the color of their skin, people mistrusting those who look different from them, juries being more likely to pronounce a suspect as guilty based on their race, and more. A month after the incident, Starbucks closed all 8,000 of their US stores for 4 hours to conduct training specifically aimed at reducing implicit racism and indeed implicit bias of any kind. Stores in Canada followed suit not long after. But was that enough? Many experts suggest that racism is embedded far deeper than a single workshop can reveal. A continued effort must be made if we're to address racism, both explicit and implicit, as one of the main challenges that cultural diversity presents. Is it possible for Harmony Day to be every day? We may not know, but it's definitely worth trying.